Hey friends, it's Julie from Plan to Create, and I am sharing 3 videos in a series all about stamping in your planner. I've already shared the first one, and it goes over the basic 6 supplies that you need to have and kind of explains some tips on selecting and using those supplies. This video is all about inks, and in the previous video I showed a glimpse of my ink drawer, and it is kind of an overwhelming sight. I'll share it here again, but I do love to stamp. I love colors, and I really have just taken it upon myself to find the most planner-friendly inks that are on the market in colors that I love and enjoy using. So first things first, I wanted to kind of remind you that I have chosen these 6 mildliner colors as kind of like a basic guideline, and so I've assigned either people in my life or tasks in my life to these colors, and so they reappear in my planner all the time in just various configurations. So then, to take it a step further, I wanted to include stamping in my planner, so of course I wanted to find inks that would coordinate. They don't have to match perfectly, but I wanted to find some inks that would coordinate and that would also be planner friendly. Inks are primarily made like for card making, maybe some scrapbooking, but a lot of times the inks themselves are actually being absorbed into cardstock, so they're not really worried when they make ink pads about bleeding through pages in planners. So it's kind of something I've taken upon myself to decide, like, how can I take these inks that are really made for a different medium and make them work in my planner? And so I am going to kind of walk you through some of the inks that I've narrowed down, and I'm going to go through each of these by color, and I'm actually going to swatch them out. I don't know if you guys have followed or have heard of Jennifer McGuire. She's an amazing card artist, stamper, and she created this file, and you can actually go in and personalize like your color and your brand of your inks, and then I'm going to actually stamp right onto these and cut them into little squares, and then I'm going to stick them here so that I have these available to kind of peek at to see what the colors look like when they're stamped on paper. I actually chose to print this out on my 32-pound paper that I would use in my planner, because the important thing is to get the sample on there so I can see what the color looks like, but then I can also flip it over and see if there's bleed through on the paper that I use on a regular basis. So whatever paper you decide to use inside your planner, I use and recommend 32-pound paper, and I'll link this one below. But whatever it is you use, always would recommend you stamping onto that paper as a preview, as a test, before you actually go inside your planner, because it can be frustrating if you make a big glob and it bleeds through and you didn't expect it. I'm going to kind of walk you through this entire process. Like I said, I'm going to start here. I'm going to basically go through the colors of the rainbow, so I'll try to stay in order. So if you're not interested in some of these colors, you can kind of zoom through, and maybe I can even tell you the times below in the description box, so that if you're more interested in one of these colors or the other, you can skip to that. I'll save the gray for last, and then following that I have like 3 blush pink colors that I wanted to share too. So in addition to this, I do use some blush pink in my planner, and I'll share those as well. So let's dive right in. I'm going to start off with the mild magenta matchups. Really quickly, I did want to mention that if you watched my previous video, I talked about it making a difference whether the image you're using is a solid image or more of a lined image. And so I'm actually going to stamp each color. I have more than one sheet printed off, so I'm going to stamp each one once with a solid image and once with a lined, just to show that sometimes a solid might bleed through a page, but if you use that same ink with a lighter lined stamp image, it would be very planner friendly. So I'll kind of talk about that as I go. I'm using this like kind of sunshine stamp from July. I just thought it was a cute shape. It's like a sunshine, but it's obviously just a simple shape. And then I'm going to use my dinner plate stamp. I use this all the time. I've used it for years. It's probably one of my most used stamps I've ever had, and so I thought it's a perfect example to show with all the different colors. So first I'll do the more solid image, and you can see I brought my mouse pad just to try to get that extra crisp image, and then I also have a baby wipe over here on the side. I'm actually going to grab a piece of paper to stamp off. After I clean it and it's a little bit wet, I can stamp off onto a dry paper so I'm not transferring any moisture from the baby wipe to my next color. I'm going to start with the soft lilac color from Pink Fresh Studio. I was recently introduced to this brand of stamps from my friend Susanna's recommendation, and I want to mention that this is a really firm ink pad. You can just see when I'm pushing against that, there's not a lot of indentation. I mean, so I'm pushing really hard, I can get that down, but ultimately it's really sturdy and it stays really true, and you're going to see that the middle of that circle doesn't get a lot of ink on it because the ink doesn't really come up that far because the surface is really solid. So I'm going to come through Okay, that's a terrible image. Wow, what happened? Well, fortunately I printed a couple of these off for each one of these. I'm gonna actually just give this a different, I have 4 sheets of this because I just know myself. So I think I might have like pushed a little bit too hard and made that wonky. Let's see. The other thing about clear stamps is you can kind of look at it, kind of glance and see like, is there ink on all of the sections? Yes. Okay, so let's try this again. I feel like that's better. And then give yourself patience because it will take a little bit of time to dry. This Sweet 16 stamp from Catherine Pooler, I'm going to kind of show that same example with her ink pads are much softer. So if I were to, you can kind of see that, maybe you can't see, but there's a little bit more give when you're pushing. It's more of like a sponge than it is a felt pad. And then you can see it's pretty well inked all the way through the middle there. And even the issue is like sometimes it will come up. Can you see that little splotch right there on my pad? I'm actually going to practice stamp this one. So it's fine, it came out okay, the image, but I'm gonna actually do it again so that I'm not pushing so hard to show you guys. So these ones, you know, I don't know, like I bet there's different techniques, but I kind of do a little twisting just to kind of make it sure that it's actually getting evenly placed on my ink pad, and that may be wrong. So I'm actually gonna come through and do just a 1, 2, 3, dab, 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 and then just see if I get a different image. Not really. So again, let's give that a little bit of time to dry before we make any adjustments. And then I am going to stamp all of the purples. I'm going to show you what they look like next to the mildliner color. This is again one of like a little bit harder, more solid of an ink pad surface. That one looks nice and dark. This is, like I said, the Waffle Flower and the Pink Fresh Studio have a little bit more firm of an ink pad, as does this one, honestly, this Grape Soda from Fawn. I don't know, I heard that one time, like to huff your stamp before you stamp it. I don't know, I'm probably making it more moist and different. Okay, and then Pixie Dust, oh sorry, that's what that one is. I have this little sample, I don't have a large Pixie Dust, and I think it's a little bit dark, but I am gonna just include it in here so that I know for future that I can actually see it and see what it looks like on paper. Ooh, yeah, really dark. We've gotten all of those done. This final one over here is actually in the other like coral color family. So this is what I have. And so you guys can kind of see how dark they are. I kind of want to do something like a mark next to this so that I can actually really tell, like, how does it match up to my mildliner. So all of these are really pretty colors. They work really well. This one is a little bit more purple. You can see a little more pink in the magenta. This one is obviously lighter. The soft lilac is a really nice matchup. This one has a little bit more pink in my opinion. And then the Grape Soda, it works out really well. So let's do the big test. Let's flip it over. And so, right offhand, I don't know if you guys can see. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shadows. I don't have a stamp there, okay? So they all kind of have a tiny bit of shadowing on the page. Of those, I feel like these two are the most shadowy. Do you guys see that? And I feel like maybe these two have the least amount of shadowing. So let's flip it over and see those two are Sweet 16 and Grape Soda. So I wanted to show you guys that. I'm going to pull out another page and I'm going to do the dinner plate stamp next, and we're going to see how that compares with the shadowing. So hang on here, let's pull that one off. Okay, I'll come through and do that same little mark to just kind of show how the mildliner looks next to it. And I want to just reiterate that I'm actually like, I mean, we'll chat about this, but like this one right here looks like a really nice matchup, but I will admit that I tend to like going a shade lighter with these. But here's the moment of truth. Let's flip it over. And this is what I'm talking about. I don't see particularly, I can see a tiny bit of bleeding right here, and that's the Pixie Dust, but I also kind of globbed that stamp on that side for some reason. It looks a little bit thicker, so I might have, that might have been a user error. But to be honest, I don't see any of the shadowing bleed through aside from that little bit there. And like I said, I feel like that could maybe be corrected with a different stamp. So I feel like that's kind of a big point of why I wanted to do this video. Like obviously there are colors that are friendlier when you're doing a solid image, but a lot of these colors will work if you're just doing lightly lined. My biggest suggestion on that is to always have a scratch piece of paper that's in your same, you know, your 32 pound or your 28 pound, whatever you're using, and just do that little practice stamp if it's kind of a new combination that you haven't tried before, a new ink color and a new stamp, just see how it works on your paper first, and then you feel more confident going into your planner. I think I'll save it to the end to do like my favorites, like from each color, like what I like and why I would use them more likely in my planner. So we'll just keep scooting on to the next color now. Okay, I'm actually going to start with this Pixie color. It's a close to my heart. This was the first brand of stamps that I ever used. This is a Pixie color. I absolutely love their packaging. But there's Pixie. Again, this is like a little bit of a firmer ink pad, which I love, and then this has this really cool magnetic closure, so they just automatically kind of clip together. I really like it. It feels really nice, so I'm in love with their packaging. We'll see how the colors hold up to these particular papers, and I'm just going to kind of work upwards from here. Got Grapefruit from Concord and 9th. These are new, and that's another thing to consider, is bringing the ink to your stamp. I think some people recommend that versus always stamping down into your ink. So I'll give that a shot here. I don't think I did a very even job on that. So you can see it's a little bit lighter on one section. So that's just part of stamping for me. I know some other people can get it nailed perfectly. This time I'll try coming down to the ink pad and see if that helps. These are a little bit softer. They're similar, really similar to the Catherine Pooler, kind of spongier, but very, very like full of ink, very user-friendly. And this has like a little bit of a stickiness, which I like. It's not slippery, so it's sticky. I don't know how else to say that. Not a big fan of that color particularly. Even if it is a matchup, I don't like the way that looks. I would definitely like to go a little bit more coral. This has been a favorite of mine. It's again a little bit more of a solid ink pad. That's pretty. As far as colors go right now, that honeysuckle is like probably my favorite. I like the way it looks. However, I know it doesn't match up to my mildliner that well. It's a little bit more red and like raspberry juicy. This is a pretty color. Here's another close to my heart color, Smoothie. Some of these look a little wonky when you first stamp them, but once they dry, they'll kind of like even out. So don't judge too hardly at first. This is My Pleasure by Waffle Flower. Okay, so that's another thing, like a stamping artist probably would hate that little bit of like white, you know, not solid image there. I personally kind of love it. It kind of looks like aged and distressed to me, and it's not. I just like feel like, okay, it's not so inky that it's bleeding through. It kind of just gives a little bit of a weathered look. I'm totally okay with that. So I don't think everyone is, but I am. Bubblegum from the Stamp Market. That one got a little bit juicy. So I found that the Stamp Market, I think I haven't talked about hers yet. Hers are also really similar to the Catherine Pooler and the Concord and 9th. It's a little bit of a squishier pad, spongier I would say. So you just like, you can see that everything gets inked up. It's like ink gets all up into the crevices there. And then last but not least, I'm gonna dry this off real quick. The Coral Cabana, make sure I'm on the mouse pad. Okay, yeah, like off the top of my head, absolutely the happiest with that color, with the way it presented. This one was a little bit juicy and I think I slid, so I smeared the image a tiny bit, but I love this color. I like the consistency of the actual image. So that one is definitely making me happy. I'm gonna come through and do my little mark next to the colors so you can kind of see how they measure up. I feel like this color itself is more orangey than I probably take it. I want this to be a little bit more of a coral color, like the inks that I select. So you're gonna see like it matches up really well to that sorbet, and that's like, I already said off the bat, like don't really like that color that much. Smoothie, it matches well, but again, it's pretty orange. This one just like, it works, but it doesn't match perfectly, but I'm actually a-okay, and I just like, I like that color, and that's the color that I want to really see appearing in my page. So moment of truth, let's flip it over. And you can see here's, there's supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I did the one down here in the corner. That one definitely has come through, so that is that Pixie color from Close to My Heart, and that's what I've kind of felt like, is that these colors are not very planner friendly. I wish that they were. I love the colors, but the actual ink, it's just not super planner friendly. I would say this one right here has the least amount of bleed through, and it's my favorite color. So you know what? gonna skip ahead. There's a big spoiler. Coral Cabana is like definitely one of my favorites. I kind of wanted to peek a little bit at the Pink Fresh Studio because I really thought that that was gonna be one of my newer favorites, but this one is the best. And then this one here, My Pleasure from Waffle Flower. I'm gonna set those apart. These two are really truly the least bled through, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say that they're both really pretty colors in my opinion. Now I wanna go through and show those same colors with the dinner plate stamp because it will make a difference, and you will see that some of them that didn't seem very friendly actually are fine. Okay, so I hope that you guys can kind of see this as well as I can. Can you see the redness in that, and then a little bit more orangey over here? I feel like this is a really nice coral, as is this kind of orangey. This is a good one. That's kind of orangey, but here's the moment of truth. Let's flip it over and see how they did. What do you guys think? Can you see anything? I really can't. If I go up towards the light, you're gonna be able to see a slight bit of shadowing, but there's zero bleed through, and really not hardly any shadowing when I look at it just like from here with your page laid down. This one and this one. So honeysuckle and grapefruit, I just kind of see a teeny tiny bit of the dinner plate, maybe a tiny bit here on the bubble gum. Not a big surprise because it is a little juicier. But yeah, so of that, I definitely feel like the Coral Cabana still remains a favorite. My Pleasure and Peachy, what's this one over here? Smoothie, that's surprising. Smoothie came through a little bit better than I expected. I really don't see much there. And that is a pretty color, but it is pretty orange. So yeah, I'll kind of, like I said, reserve my favorites for later, but I'm gonna set them aside. You guys kind of can already tell probably. Okay, let's start in with the Mildliner Yellow, the Mild Gold. I don't have as many of these colors, so let's scoot through them. I have Tiara from Catherine Pooler. Okay, so that's one that I would like to pick up from Pink Fresh. I feel like the one I have is a little lemony yellow and I wanted a little more gold. So it's not available right now, but I'm going to buy it and add this when I get it. Oof. Some of these new ink pads too, I literally just got these. They're fresh off the UPS truck and they probably are a little bit juicy. And I would say that if you find that that ever happens to you, I was told that you could kind of do a little bit of this. You can see a lot of the ink is pooling up there. So they're super juicy. And maybe if you do that a little bit, add another one. Yeah, it's not quite as juicy. So just something to consider. Okay, these are all starting to look the same to me. That's just a bunch of yellow. Let's see, Lemon Whip. This is Pink Fresh Studio. Ooh, light. Sunflower was one of my initial favorites. Looks a little harsh right there. I think it just needs to dry. Okay, Lemon Zest. Oof, so that's pretty orange, you can see that. But I wanted to stamp it out because I hadn't used it for a while and I couldn't remember. I'm kind of looking through the viewfinder to see what you see. I feel like this is a really good matchup just visually. This is a really nice matchup. And this one potentially. This one is obviously a little bit lighter. This one is super orange. And this one, I think it will dry up into a nice matchup, but it's a little inky right now. So let's see what they look like on the other side. And okay, so we have two here that are not showing up at all on my end. Can you guys see these a little bit? If I bring it up to the light, there is not one there. So these two are like by far the friendliest, and so that's the Tiara and the Lemon Whip. Okay, I'm not super surprised by that, but let's give the chance for the lighter lined ones and see how they look with the meal plan stamp. So those are the ones I have, and let's flip that over now and see that really I don't think anything is showing through except for that one end. For some reason I got that end on that buttercup, but that's definitely my fault, not the inks. So I would say that any of those are planner friendly. These two show through quite a bit, and this one I just know is an odd color. Sunflower, I could kind of want to make it work because it's such a nice matchup color-wise. So I'm pretty convinced that I could definitely use Sunflower with the lighter lined stuff. It'd be a favorite. Tiara and Lemon Whip are obviously super friendly. I didn't do this here. Let's kind of let you see how those end up looking. I think I may not even include Lemon Zest. and I might not keep that color because I feel like it's just not a color that I particularly love, and if it's not a matchup for me in my planner, I can let that one go. I have plenty of other yellows, and this is part of how I kind of weed things out as well. I don't need to keep that whole entire ink drawer full of inks. I like to weed out and keep the ones that I really will use and that are my favorites. Okay, so that's the mild gold matchups, and we will head into green in just a sec. Okay, no lie, this has been a tricky green to match up to. I really like it though, and so I'm gonna go ahead and go through some of these ones that I have sitting out, and we'll kind of see where we land. We'll start with Sprout. This is a Concord in 9th. Again, it's another one of those really new colors. I'm actually stamping it here just to check. It's really juicy. I might do this little trick over here again, kind of get some of that extra stuff off the top, and we'll see if that helps. I want this one to win because I really like the color. I think it might be a little bit juicy though, so we'll see. Okay. Then Garden Green, and this one I want to say I've had for a while, and I think it's a little bit on the drier side, which is a way for me to ensure that it doesn't bleed through like all the extra ink, but I probably could stand to like re-ink that. I think Studio Calico sells re-inkers, and if you guys aren't familiar, those, like, you can buy the ink in like a little juicy bottle to refill some of these, and that is nice. It helps elongate the life. But of course there's me who doesn't want juicy stamps, so I hardly ever re-ink. Kind of weird like that. I like the dry ones that I know won't bleed through my planner. There's Fresh Pear from Pink Fresh Studio. So you guys know I love the Catherine Pooler inks, and honestly, well, we'll see how that matches up. Sometimes I think that that's brighter than I want it to be. Sweet Leaf. Okay, those are some really great greens. Now that I'm kind of looking at them, I've kind of narrowed it down to just those 5. I'll give you a quick look at how they look next to the mildliner. And I honestly am happy with the way any of these look. The colors are not, they're all really friendly with this. I'd say off the top of my head that Sprout and Fresh Pear are kind of jumping out at me. Garden Party is pretty too though. So let's flip it over. And wow, those look really good. I can see some shadowing here and a little bit here. Can you guys even see that? It's pretty minimal. So I would say, where did I say? There and there. So these 3 are very friendly: Garden Green, Garden Party, and Sweet Leaf. Okay, so I will keep that in mind, but let's also remind ourselves what they look like with the thinner lines. Oh, it's Going Green, not Garden Green. My bad. From Studio Calico. I'm so used to like garden colors. I'm sorry. And honestly, I feel like Sprout is like the nicest matchup there, so let's kind of see. Those are all very, very friendly. Really would have to look hard to see any shadowing or any bleed through. So that kind of makes it hard because they're all doable. I feel like the Sprout though, as much as I want, like I really do have to fall back to this because I'm not always going to use lightly lined stamps. And so I do kind of have to come back to these like 3 that tend to be a little bit more friendly. And I will say the Garden Green almost is so light, the Going Green is almost so light sometimes that it doesn't even show up. So I kind of leaned here towards this, but yeah, we'll decide at the very end, right? I keep saying that, good grief. I'm gonna skip over these pink ones because I said I would do them at the end, so I will come back for those and we will head into the blues and grays. Okay, now we're matching up this aqua, it's like a blue-green mildliner. I love this color. Let's see where we match up with these aqua colors with our blue-green mildliner. That's Meant to Be from Catherine Pooler. Ooh. This used to be one of my favorites, and then I think I replaced the color, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's never been quite the same for me. Okay, there's 2 sea glasses. There's a sea glass for the Prima marketing and a sea glass for the stamp market. You know, I can just like tell by looking at that. It's like the ink isn't sticking on there right. I don't know. It's pretty dark. It's a lot greener. Oof. So there's the solid ones. I will come through with the ink, and this is like almost like neon. This one is a really hard one to match up. I love this color, and I've hardly ever been able to find an ink that is a perfect matchup. I feel like off the top of my head, you can kind of see how these work up. And like this one tends to be really green here. This is super green and a little bit green. This one is a really nice matchup, I will say. I think that this one is, and this one are kind of, that's kind of where I'm laying when I'm putting some bets on these guys. This one is too dark. This one, I don't know, it's kind of funky. This one's pretty, but it needs to be like a shade lighter, in my opinion, just for like color matches up. Now let's see what happens on the other side. Okay, cool. So there is no stamp here, and there, I think if you guys are like me, I can definitely see these guys here. So here's 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4. So Meant to Be is really good. Sea Glass, Prima. So you cannot see, there is not a stamp here, sorry. I can't see this bleeding through at all. And I think that that is why I love this one so much. This has basically been one of my favorites. I really wanted to love the Meant to Be from Catherine Pooler because I love so many of her other inks and I love the idea of using all of the same brand. But I have to say, I'm just spoiling everything. There's no fun at the end here. Let's see all these guys in the lightly lined. That's pretty. And really crisp. Like, I don't know if you can see some of the lines come through a little thicker. That's just so crisp. And I think that that has to do for me with the firmer surface. This one has a firmer surface. Okay, so I'm curious which ones jump out to you guys as you see these like as matchups. I feel like it's hard, and I'm trying to look at it through yours. This looks like a really nice matchup on the camera when I'm looking through my viewfinder. That really doesn't match up well. Hardly either. This one sort of does, and that one sort of. I think this one in my view is like the prettiest, although this one I love. And I honestly could go with any of them. This one has a teeny tiny bit of shadowing through it, so that's the Aqua Sky Concord in 9th. But other than that, I feel like any and all of those are really friendly. It's really a matter of me kind of weeding out some of the ones that just honestly don't match up. Like the Meant to Be and the Sea Glass are pretty much out for me. Kind of the Glass Slipper too, it's a little more muted. So if I were to just look at matching up, I think New Fish, Sea Glass, and Ocean Breeze are kind of some favorites there. So I'm gonna go ahead and set those apart. Okay, I have gray kind of spread across a couple of sheets, so we'll have to pull this out and I'll kind of walk you through those guys. Let's start with the solid image and we'll start with the Twilight. And that is a beautiful image. It is a little dark for my taste. Just off the bat, I'll mention that. But it is a really nice crisp image. I know Lauren, was that it? On Instagram last night, you were saying how much you loved the Catherine Pooler inks, and I can see why. As I'm using them, they have been super reliable in just nice crisp images. Just some of the colors are ever so slightly off. Misty Coast, I don't think I got a very good image on that. I might try, I have an extra sample here that I messed up on the other one. Yeah, I think that might be better. I'll kind of keep that around in case I want to add that one to my sample. Dove, let's go. Concord in 9th. Pretty, but again, pretty dark. Charcoal from Close to My Heart. I wanted to mention that. Okay, and then last I want to do Manatee. Where are you at? Anyone else have kids that watch VeggieTales? Barbara Manatee. If you haven't seen that, you're gonna think I'm crazy. This used to be one of my favorite inks, and the truth is that it's a warm gray, and I really like it. Ooh. But I feel like maybe I got a new one and that doesn't look like the one I'm thinking of. But I also need to let these dry, give them a second. I've got those, all the solids done, so now I'm gonna come through and do the lighter lines. I like the way that looked. That's so crisp and good. Oof. Oh, so soft and beautiful. I don't think it would photograph very well, but it's really pretty. Ooh, dark. Woohoo. All right, let's do some matchups with the colors here, see how they're looking. So you can see the cement has some warmth to it. And I really think the gray area is nice. It is a very, very close matchup to the mildliner itself, and it stamps out nicely. But let's go ahead and kind of see. So all of those show through ultimately, but none of the light lines do to me, so that's interesting. And then I'm grabbing this guy here. Okay, so this here, I feel like those show through with shadowing, but this one not so much, so that, well, the Misty Coast, no big surprise there. And really none of the grays are coming through too strongly. This one, again, the Misty Coast is probably the best. Okay, and then last but not least, I only have 3 blush pink colors I wanted to test out here. Again, I just add these in a little bit periodically. They're not like in my mildliner family, but they are just pretty. I was surprised though the other day at having a blush pink. You would think that that's like the lightest color in the world and it would never bleed through. I found that, which one did I use? Maybe it was the Bashful, but it did kind of bleed through my pages and I was shocked. So just, you know, thinking, I always am suggesting to get light colors and you'll be safer with those. You don't get much lighter than blush pink, and sadly it may or may not be the safest. Okay, so these are both kind of those, they're just inks that I don't know if I'm very comfortable working with. I think I'm likely to grab this one 9 out of 10 times and take my risk on the bleeding through. I just feel like I get a little bit smudgy there. Like, so see how I inked up one side more than the other? Again, maybe some more practice, and if I were consistently using that style, I would get a better feel for it. A lot of it is just a feel, and it's just practice and giving yourself time to get it right. When I'm bouncing back and forth between different ink pad styles, like this one I can press hard, this one I shouldn't press hard, I'm not getting as good of a feel overall, so I'm probably not getting as crisp of images as I could potentially. Just gonna say that. But you can see there is actually, yeah, some bleed through on these, which is a bummer. It's surprising because it's pink, like I mentioned. I'd say this is probably the least. This is for sure the most, and then this one. So the Bashful is my favorite of those potentially. Again, I cannot help but share my favorites. So here's where I just wish, like, would Close to My Heart just come out with a planner-friendly line? Like, I love their packaging. I like their structure of their stamps. But I need to just be willing to just kind of pop around from brand to brand and use what I want. Doesn't all, wow, that was bad. That's why I printed multiples of these, because I counted on the fact that I would probably mess up. Okay, it's a little bit better, but again, they're a little globby and I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and I have stamped a lot. I am not a professional. So I would love to have someone analyze me. I'm sure you guys can watch it and go, Julie, you're not holding it straight. Let's get my surface good. Okay, that was a better image. Kind of blush pink there. And I think you'll see that that one did come through because I globbed it, but when I got it over here, it's a little better, but honestly, it still does kind of come through. So it's that new ink. Some of it could just be it's too juicy, but these are beautiful, and I kind of just, I love that Bashful one. It's pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my trimmer and just kind of show you a little process of how I would put these into my sleeves so that I can always refer to these. Hang on. So this gives some good directions. You can basically start going like this, and it suggests that maybe you not cut through all the way to this end. You kind of leave that hanging, therefore you have those marks to come back to. It's good advice, so I'm gonna follow that. I also know that these are 2-inch squares, so I could potentially measure that pretty easily once I need to. Okay, so from here I can just I can measure. It's not a big deal. In fact, I can probably put these through all at the same time. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of walk you through what I would do here. I'll start with this color, and I'm gonna weed out some of the ones that I just know I'm not interested in. And then I do wanna save room because some of these I wanna include the lightly lined version, and I wanna be able to see through it. So I'm gonna save some room down here to do the lightly lined. And I'm going to include all of these. I feel like all of these are options that I would enjoy. I will probably put my favorites up at the top here. So this is basically what I wanna do. You can tell this one is cardstock, it's super thick, so it's a little bit of a different color. But I do wanna keep those available and open so that I can really tell which ones have a tendency to bleed through. That's part of the information I wanna glean from this. And so then I will put the ones below here and be able to see through on the back for the lightly lined versions too. I'm not gonna walk you through the entire process of all my cutting, so I will show you at the end how everything came together. Okay, let me quickly flip you through my little swatch book here so that we can kind of get an idea. I went ahead and did a mildliner swipe on my normal paper that I use instead of the cardstock that was there. I also did a tombow of the current tombow that I've kind of been matching up with that. And I say matching, and I totally recognize that it's a lighter shade, but I've really been enjoying kind of that mix and match of both of those. So I think when you see those, and I'm sorry for the glare, but when you kind of get the feel for those, like you can kind of start to see which ones tie in nicely and which ones are a little bit pink. But basically what I've done here is I'll flip you through all of these. You can see that I have the solids and then the lines if I can fit both. Basically what I really need though is the solids because I want to be able to flip the page over and go like, oh, did it have a bleed through or did it not? And I can tell that quickly by looking here because I can see through. That's kind of the gist. And some of these I had room because I only had a few colors so I could put both the solid and the lines. I think that the blue, I just only had enough room for the solids. And so then I stuck the pinks here as well. And then I redid the tombow that I end up using a lot, 761, because that's kind of my matchup with those. And then I have my grays. And I did weed out a few of the colors that I just knew were not favorites and were not even really contenders. And so I did kind of narrow it down to some of my faves. But officially now I will line out my 7 favorite colors, my 6 mildliner plus my favorite blush. And it won't be a big surprise. I put them all in the top corner here. So I have my Sweet 16 is my absolute favorite one of those. My Coral Cabana. I have my Tiara. So really, the Catherine Pooler inks, I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. They really have one out. The Garden Party, it's kind of a tough call, but I really do feel like it was good for me to see this exercise because truly it really does go nicely with this. I've always looked at this and seen that as being super bright, but the color itself really does go nicely. And because of the like 0 bleed through, it's a winner for me. I am not surprised that this is my favorite here. It just is such a good matchup, and really, again, the bleed through is a huge thing for me. I want to be able to know that if I want to stamp a solid or I want to stamp lines that I absolutely can in my planner. These are like my go-to safety net inks. And then I have Twilight here as my favorite, and that's a big surprise for me. I really thought I would end up going more like the Misty Coast or the gray area. This is still kind of hard for me, and I'm kind of still glancing back here looking if I know it's hard for you guys to see what came through and what didn't. It's hard. I think that the gray area is like a really perfect matchup. Like, and I'm just, number one, I'm not sure if it's available right now or ever for me to like re-ink or repurchase or to recommend. So I'll stick that there, but I think it's followed closely with the Twilight as long as the Twilight isn't gonna bleed through. And as you can see, the Twilight here doesn't bleed through at all with the lightly lined, and it looks so close to my inks, it looks so close to my mildliner color. The Manatee and the Misty Coast are really a warmer gray, and you can see here's my tombow that I'm using. It's super blue gray, so it really doesn't match up to that. It's just kind of a preference that I just like the light color. So I'm kind of all over the map, but I would say that somewhere in the middle of this is my favorite, and I'll kind of try to narrow that down through time. But yeah, I have like kind of honorable mentions, and I have basically, these are kind of in order of my favorites, you know, the 1, 2, 3 spots. I feel like for one reason or another, whether it's because it didn't bleed through or because it's a very close matchup or just a color that I like, or I've taken into consideration, I do have some of these favorites here I'll definitely keep around because they are that harder ink pad. These are all soft, so it's surprising to me that I'm end up selecting those as my number 1 picks. But I do like the harder ink pad typically, so I'll always be kind of watching to see what I can find in that style. That's why the Pink Fresh Studio is often up here on the top row, is because it's kind of my honorable mention with that harder ink pad, and it's a soft color that I really can't go wrong with. Most of those didn't bleed through, not very badly anyway. And yeah, the Pink Fresh Studio, I still kind of have a glass slipper up here, but it's, I mean, honestly, New Fish in the Pond is probably my preference in the way of color, so I actually might switch that up there to my like second place. I think it just bled through a little bit. This glass slipper might have been a little more friendly, but I'm gonna kind of lean towards the New Fish and Pond as my second choice after Prima. So I think this is kind of fun, and I can always reevaluate. Like, I know in my mind that it's like number 1, 2, 3 picks, and then some honorable mentions in there that I can also use in my planner. But it's kind of a fun way to keep track and to remind myself that these colors maybe are closer on track than I thought. And I will be watching to see if I can test out these Concord and Ninth. Like, I really like that sprout color. I think maybe if it just lost a little bit of its juice, like it's just such a new stamp, little school cube, that maybe it will end up being something I could work in a little bit more. So, I mean, I can just kind of start to fuss and like really pare down, and I will always be interested in like trying out new colors and new stamps. If you know of some that are like that firmer ink pad and maybe, you know, soft, nice colors that you think will go, let me know. I'm always open to trying new ink pads. I'm never gonna be like, I'm never gonna quit because this is kind of fun for me. Oh, and then I did forget, I pulled this Bashful. That one is my favorite. Like I said, all 3 of the pinks surprisingly did tend to come through a teeny tiny bit, which is a bummer, but they're still really pretty, and it's a beautiful color to work in. So these are kind of my picks, and I'll duke it out with the grays. Let me know which one you guys liked of these, or if you're surprised, or you think I should reconsider another color after all this process. But I think this is kind of where I'm sitting. So thank you so much for joining me through this process. I know it was long, and I'll try to edit out as much as I can, speed through some of the process, because I don't mean to bore you. But it really walks you through some of the things that I'm taking into consideration as I'm selecting my inks. So thanks so much for joining me, guys. Take care. See you next time. Barbara Manatee. If you haven't seen that, you're gonna think I'm crazy. You're the one for me, sent from up above. You are the one I love, the one I love.